It's my pleasure and honor to introduce tonight's speaker, Dr. Brad Blood. Dr. Blood is a senior biologist at SOMAS and a research associate in mammalogy at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County. He earned his bachelor's degree in zoology and master's degree in biology at the California State University, Long Beach. Go Beach. And his PhD at the University of Southern California, studying under the curator of mammals at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County. His PhD thesis was on the evolution of fish catching in bats, an ecomorphological study on convergent adaptations to a unique feeding strategy. He has published articles on the mammals of Los Angeles County, allometric growth in coyotes, spring hares in Botswana, small mammals in Namibia, bats in Southeast Asia, elephant shrews, cotton rats, and the fish-eating Myotis, the fish-eating bat. Most recently has published a guide to the terrestrial mammals of Southern California and the Eastern and Southern Sierra Nevada. I'll show you that book later, and we have those books for sale in the gift shop. The title of tonight's talk is The Marine Bat of Baja California, Myotis vivesi. Thank you, and please help me welcome Dr. Brad Blood.
Thank you, Julie. It appears I can't make up my mind what I want to study. Can you hear me all right? No. Can you hear me now? Okay, how about now? Oh, hold on.
You want to hold this?
Okay, how's that?
Give it a second. Give it a second. I turned it on. Try again.
Can you hear me now? Sound like a commercial. Okay. We'll try this one more time. All right, thank you. Yes, so Julie asked me to give a talk, and she said it had to be something marine. And it just so happened that one of the bats I worked on for my dissertation happens to be the one and only marine bat that there is out of all the bats. So it turned out to be very, very convenient. So I'm going to proceed in the following way, just so you know where we're headed on this journey tonight when we talk about this one bat. I'd like to give you a little bit of an introduction to bats in general, so you know a little bit more about the animal I'm talking about. So we'll talk about the two major types of bats. There are two major types. There's megabats and microbats. A little bit about bat basics, I call it. A little bit about anatomy, because that will come in to be very important later on. I'll introduce you to Myotis vivesi, sort of the star of the show. We'll talk about where it lives. We'll talk about its important characteristics. A little bit about its ecology, its foraging habits, its food resources, which makes it very unique among the bats. We'll talk about where it roosts, which is also very unique among bats. Its physiology. You've got to have a very special physiology. If you're going to be a marine bat and live on the marine environment, you better have some good physiology. A little bit about its reproduction. After all, you do need more bats. And then we have time. Just some notes on fishing bats in general. Then I have some ending notes and some acknowledgments. So, bats, the mammalian order Chiroptera. Chiroptera means hand wing. Bats are the only mammals capable of powered flight. Even though you hear about things called flying squirrels don't actually fly. They cheat. They actually crawl up the trees and they glide. But they do have a membrane between their forelimb and their hind limb that they spread out, and they glide between trees or from the trees to the ground. In our local mountains, we do have flying squirrels. And what's really interesting about the flying squirrels in the local mountains, apparently if you go out with a black light and you catch them, they bioluminesce. You can turn them, you can see them with a black light, sort of blue, purple. Who knew? I'm not sure why. Very fancy flying squirrels, apparently. And there are flying squirrels in Africa, Southeast Asia, some really pretty ones in Southeast Asia, all sorts of colors. Very nice. There are over 1,400 species of bats recognized currently. And they're worldwide in distribution except for the Arctic regions and the very far northern regions. So you don't find them there. There are two main groups. There are megabats and there are microbats. So a little bit about megabats. They're in the family Chiropteridae, and they're known as flying foxes. And if you look at the cute little faces of these Indian flying foxes, you can see why. They kind of look like foxes or dogs. And in German, they're called Flederhund, which means flying dog, and you can see why. They're really quite cute. There's only 196 species of these guys, so there's not very many. But they have a pretty good distribution, subtropical, primary, secondary forests. They don't echolocate like microbats, except for one. Of course, there's always one, but it's not true echolocation. What they do, this is Rosetus aegypticus, they click their tongue. And they click their tongue and they listen for the echo. So they kind of cheat, but it still counts. Or at least they think it counts anyway. These bats rely on vision and olfaction. They can smell rotting and ripening fruit for a long distance. So that's their main food source. They do pollinate. They have, and they do eat pollen, some of them, fruit and nectar. They pollinate over 500 species of tropical plants. And let's see, I cannot remember them all, because 500 is a lot. But just as an example, they pollinate some eucalyptus, some paperbark trees, some figs, some durian, bananas, guavas, and others. And the largest bat species in the world is in this group. And it weighs up to 3.2 pounds and has a wingspan of almost 6 feet, which is, that's a hell of a bat. Oh, sorry. That's a really big bat. So, and I've seen pictures of it. It really is quite large. Anyway, these are pretty amazing creatures. Enough of them. So microbats. These make up the majority of bats around the world. There are 17 families. I cannot remember them all. There are over 1,200 species of microbats. Townsend's big-eared bat is a bat that's found here in California. It's actually a species of special concern. They have these really, really big ears, which is used in their echolocation, helps them figure out where they're going. One of the interesting things about these bats, all microbats, is that the ear mechanism in their skull is surrounded by fat. So it's essentially insulated from the skull. So as they send the echolocation signal out and it comes in, they're separated. They don't confabulate the two. So anyway, they're found worldwide on all continents except Antarctica and in the polar regions. Wide variety of diets. They eat insects, pollen, nectar, fruit, leaves, blood, spiders, vertebrates, and fish, which is why I'm here. But not every species, of course, eats all these things. There are specialists. And I was telling someone the other day about spider-eating bats in the genus Phoniscus. I love that genus name. It just rolls off the tongue. Phoniscus. I could say it all day long. But we used to think it was really, really rare because no one ever caught them. They catch bats in these things called mist nets. And you people that do bird stuff know what mist nets are. They're big nets, very thin fibers, made crisscross, and you string them up and usually over streams, and the bats come down to get a drink, and bam, they fall in these mist nets. Well, they'd put them up, and they wouldn't get any of these things. Well, of course they wouldn't get any of these things. These things eat spiders, so they'd fly up to the mist net and stop, and they'd fly over the top and fly away. So someone invented another trap, which is called a harp trap, and it has parallel wires, and they offset them by a few inches, and at the bottom is a big plastic trough. And so as soon as they set these up between the trees, they caught these things like crazy. So an interesting little anecdote on that. I love that story. And then these bats have a wide variety of shapes and sizes, from the little tiny bumblebee bat in Southeast Asia, Crassionicterus thalongi, which is only 1.3 inches long and 7/100ths of an ounce. That's a really tiny bat. To, it's called the American false vampire bat, vampire on the spectrum, up to with a wingspan of up to 3 feet. That's a bruiser of a microbat. But it's not a real vampire bat. It doesn't do vampire bat things, if I can say that. These microbats, they do echolocate. Most of it's above human hearing, but every now and then, some of the species, you can hear them. They chatter. They pollinate a lot of crops. For those of you that like margaritas, they pollinate agave to make tequila. They also pollinate cashews, bananas, mangoes, guavas, lots of other things. Some of them are solitary, and some of them are very gregarious, and live in colonies of thousands, such as the Brazilian free-tailed bat, Tidera brasiliensis, lives in colonies by the millions, which is made famous by Carlsbad Caverns. Thousands of people go there every year just to watch these bats fly out of a hole in the ground. Admittedly, it's a very nice one, but still. And then the Congress Bridge in Austin, Texas attracts lots of people to watch these bats fly out. And they consume up to 250 tons of insects a night. It's a lot of bugs. So there are a lot of sizes, a lot of shapes, a lot of different microbats. This is just a few. So since I mentioned the false vampire, we have here, here's my cursor, so there we go. Is it working? Yeah, there it goes. This is the real vampire bat, common vampire bat, Desmodus rotundus. It occurs in Mexico, Central America. He's got a nice set of teeth here in the front, little incisors. They're triangular shaped. So what they do is they land behind usually domestic cattle, a horse or goat, something like that. And they hop up to it, and they jump up, and they strike at it and dig these little triangular-shaped wounds. And as the wound bleeds, they lick at it, and they have, what am I trying to say? They have, that's it, thank you, anticoagulants in their blood, in their saliva. And it keeps bleeding as long as they lick at it. And then when they're full, they fly away. The wound eventually does heal over. So, and sometimes even it's been known, people camping outside get little wounds on their nose because they have their nose sticking out of their sleeping bag. So just if you're ever camping out in Central America, just cover your nose. Next to them is the tent-making bat. I really like these guys. They will make a roost in banana leaves, and they'll chew along the central rib, and the banana leaf will collapse on them and making a little tent. They eat fruit, so they'll fly around, they get like a fig, they'll mash it up in their mouth, and they'll spit the seed out. So they're good seed dispersers, which is really kind of neat. One next to that, I can't talk about bats around here without talking about one of our local bats, the California Myotis. Eats insects. It's a very small bat. You can see he's kind of brown on top, brown on the bottom, got a little brown face, little brown bat. But, is very common, eats lots of insects. Down here, see how it shows up. Leptonectarus, they pollinate agave plants. So very important for tequila production. At one time, and they live in caves, at one time, farmers in Mexico were bombing these caves with dynamite and wondering why their agave plants were not blooming and producing more agave plants. One of the biologists in Mexico, fellow I know, Rodrigo Medellin, has started a conservation program to save these bats and to save the bat caves and to help save the blue agave, which makes tequila, And so he has been working with these people, and these bats and their bat caves are coming back. He's doing a very good job. He is known as the Batman of Mexico, and if you have a chance, I recommend you watch his documentary about this. It is very, very good. And buy bat safe tequila, by the way. Next to them is, or next to, the next one over is Brazilian free-tailed bat, which I already talked about. It eats lots and lots of insects. But what I didn't know actually until today, and you'd think I'd know everything about bats, is that this bat actually also pollinates sugarcane. And what do we get from sugarcane? We get rum. Another reason to like bats. So, the last bat, just to show you some of the variety, is Vampirum spectrum, sometimes called the spectral bat. It is a really big bat. He's got a good set of teeth on him. He eats lizards, birds, frogs, other bats, whatever he can get his teeth on. So microbats are very diverse in terms of diet, size, shape, very, very interesting guys and girls, sorry. So a little bit on bat basics and some terminology, and then we will move on to the star of our show. So I'm going to talk about a lot of these things later on as it relates to fish catching. So it's a good thing that we can look at these things. So forearm we all have, elbow to wrist. So that's an important part of bat anatomy. Digits 1 and 2, so you have the thumb and the second finger here. They're here, but not as, they still support the wing, but we won't talk much about them. Digits 3, 4, and 5 we will talk about because they constitute what's called the wingtip, which is this area over here. And it's also called the chiropterygium. Plagiopterygium is between digit 5 and the ankle. This provides a lot of area for lift, a lot of the wing. Now you have, like we have, you have femur, and then you have the knee, you have the tibia, you have the hind foot, which is the one in the back. But what they have that we do not have is a calcar. And that is a projection, usually cartilaginous, that supports a membrane between the legs. It's called the interfemoral membrane or the uropterygium. And that's really important for aerodynamics, but for fish catching, at least for Myotis vivesi, it is a really important structure. And I will get more into that later. And so these become very important structures. And here you have these big ears. And this is called the tragus, by the way, if you're kind of wondering. So I will come back to these in a little bit. But so we can see kind of what these things look like on an actual bat. Here's the pterygium, chiropterygium, digit 5, 4, and 3, a little bit of the ear. Here you have the foot, ankle, knee, uropterygium, and some of the tail. This just happens to be, ta-da, Myotis vivesi. So Myotis vivesi is the fish-eating bat of Baja California. And here you can see he's got cute little eyes, moderately sized ears. It is the largest species of Myotis in the New World. It is monotypic. There are no, which means there's no subspecies. There's just this one species. So, in terms of Myotis worldwide, and the genus Myotis is worldwide. It is found in North America. It's found in South America. It's found in Central America. It is found in Europe. It is found in Asia. It is found in Africa. It is an incredibly diverse genus, lots of species. The only one that comes close is the nominate species, Myotis, which is kind of a rotund, heavy set bat. So, and it's found in Europe. So, but we'll talk more about some of these European Myotis later if we have time. Where does it live? Lives in Mexico. And in fact, it is endemic to Baja California, Sea of Cotez. This is the only place in the world it's found. Found on the shoreline of Sonora, Mexico, islands in the Sea of Cotez, parts of the shoreline of Baja, and on this little tiny place on the Pacific side on the Bahia Sebastian Viscano. And so this map here is from Hall's 1981 Mammals of North America. And this shows a much bigger distribution than this map over here, which was published by it's the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. Some of you may be familiar with this organization from 2016, and that's when they placed this bat on their threatened list. And so the distribution is very much reduced. And part of that is because on a lot of these islands in Baja, where it used to occur, in a lot of these areas of mainland, there are introduced feral cats and rarest, which are very good predators. And unfortunately, they've been very good at predating these bats. And I will tell you why they're so easily predated when we get a little bit further into the talk. So, what are some of the physical characteristics of this bat which make it so special? And by the way, these characteristics is really what I studied in my dissertation. It was a study where I looked at the musculature, hind limb musculature of these bats and their wing structure. So I took apart so many hind limbs of so many different bats. I was called Dr. Bat Butt for many years at USC, just as an aside. So Myotis vivesi has what's called a high aspect ratio wing, which basically means it's long and thin. It's elongated. It's the kind of wing that bats use to fly in uncluttered open environments, which means it's not really maneuverable. They're not going to be going like this in and out of bushes. They're going to be going straight, not lots of tight turns, which is good when you're foraging over the ocean. You don't need tight turns. The plagiopatagium, which is this, attaches way high on the leg. So it would attach way, if it was on you and I, it'd be way up here, instead of down on at our ankle like it is in most bats. So the hind limb is mostly free of wing, which as you can see, a bat flying over the ocean trying to catch fish is pretty handy. You don't want your wing dragging through the water. Energetically, what this means is they don't spend a lot of energy to fly. So that's what low cost of transport means in this sense. So, more characteristics. They have elongated feet. You're going to hear me talk a lot about feet. You're going to think I'm odd. But feet are a big thing when it comes to fish catching bats. The hind feet of Myotis vivesi average 33% of the head and body length. That's really big. They can hook their toes over their knee if they wanted to. They're probably not so inclined. But you think about it, with you and I, we would need really huge shoes if we had feet like that. That's really tremendously long. The toes and the claws are compressed laterally. So the base to height ratio is 1:8. So that's a really long and narrowed toe. The calcar, which is that bone I talked about, or cartilaginous structure that comes off its ankle that we don't have, thank God, it'd be really difficult to walk, is strong and built. So it starts off really high and it tapers. And it's really strongly built. And in fact, I don't know if I published this, but I saw this in my observations during my dissections. It's synovial joint. It actually has a joint capsule and synovial fluid. It's really interesting. And ligaments, anyway. Unlike other Myotis, and this is really interesting too, you saw Myotis californicus in our previous slides. It was all brown. It's brown on top, brown on the bottom, brown on the front, brown on the back. Myotis vivesi has white fur on the bottom. It's totally unique. I'm not sure why. I mean, it flies around at night. Who's going to know? But it's white on the bottom. Maybe it has something to do if the moon is shining. Fish maybe think it's part of the moon. I have no idea. It's really interesting, though, and unique. So this is the foot of Myotis vivesi. So these little bumps here are the heads of the metatarsals. So if you were to, or what we call sort of the balls of the feet. Are the phalanges. Those are some long phalanges, and these are some big claws, long and sharp. So, or would be our toenails. If we were to show those to our podiatrist, he'd probably faint. but these are important in their lifestyle. It doesn't show this picture doesn't show the Europetagium very well, but that's very specialized. So all of this thing, the feet, the Europetagium, all feeds into how they forage, which is what all of this morphology leads up to. So like most bats, they leave the roost after dark. And they usually return about 3 a.m., maybe 4 a.m. They may return many times during the night also. It just depends. They usually fly directly to their feeding areas out over the Gulf of California. They cover large distances. They may be 4 or 5 miles out at sea, wherever they go, wherever they find their fish. They also use echolocation, but I think they also use visual cues. And I'll tell you why I think that, and I'm not the only one. So, and when they're out hunting, they have been heard, they emit chatter. So they're circling over the water. You can hear them chattering. And when they're over their prey, or when they're gaining altitude after they eat. But as they approach their prey, their vocal chatter becomes faster and faster and faster into little bursts until finally you can't hear it. And that's them honing in with their echolocation. I'll get more into that just a little bit later about that. And why do I think they use visual clues? My major professor published a paper late 60s? No, probably early 70s. And he was out with a former curator of fishes at the LA County Master, Robert Lavenberg. You remember him. They were trolling for fish in the Sea of Cotez. And they were out in this boat and had its lights on. And there were a whole bunch of these Myotis vivesi following the boat. And they were actually fishing in the spotlight. So they were following the boat and they were dipping in the light. So, and what was even more astounding to me is there was a 16-knot headwind and they were staying up with the boat and still fishing. So that was pretty amazing. So, and there have been other reports of them visually cueing in on the fish or shrimp at the surface, depending on what they were eating. So, pretty amazing stuff. So, basic foraging behavior. They begin their approach 10, 15 feet above the water. They begin to fly down. About 2 to 6 inches, they start zigzagging, depending on where they think their target is. They touch the surface, grab the prey with either their feet or their Europetagium. I'll get to the Europetagium in a minute. They pass it up to their mouth. They eat it on the fly. So they just pass it up, pop it in their mouth, and continue going. Or sometimes they take it back to the roost, depending on how big it is. They like to eat their fish head first, which is smart because they don't like being bit. And they have been found to have bite marks on the Europetagium. So smart strategy if you don't like being bit. So, and what I also found was interesting is they've been found hovering over a target. To me, they don't really have the wing structure for hovering, but this is really interesting observation. So neat stuff. So foraging posture. This is where the knee and the feet and the Europetagium really come into play. What I didn't mention when we talked about bat anatomy is they have knees, we have knees. They have hips, we have hips. They have feet, we have feet. But their knees and hips are rotated 180 degrees from ours. So if I was a bat, my hip and my knee would be pointed that way. And the sole of my foot would be pointed this way. So when they feed and they come down from the water, they're dragging the sole of their foot through the water, and then they're dragging that interfemoral membrane between their legs also through the water. So this 180-degree rotation makes it very handy for them to do this. Now, all bats have that rotation, not just these guys, and that's how they also feed. In the air, aerial insectivores also do that. They swoop onto their prey, capture things, and pop it in their mouth. But these guys do it in the water. And not only that, they put their whole foot in the water, and they drag their tail membrane as well. So it's a good thing that their wing membrane is attached high up on their hip. so that this does not become involved in the water, and it provides lots of lift. So that is really great. So they do that, and then they grab the fish, they pop in their mouth. But what's interesting is they also eat shrimp, and I'll get to that in a minute, and the shrimp get caught on the Europatagium because it has little stiff hairs on it. So it's like pinning them. So they go, it's like a little stiff net, and they pin the little shrimp to it. So they have shrimp too. And as far as I know, they're the only species of bat that eats shrimp. So bats of good taste, apparently. And then I love this. I just read this the other day. I went back and read this guy's dissertation again the other day just to get a few more little tidbits for tonight. And I'd forgotten this. They have been observed to fly into a boat mast and cables. So apparently they don't pay a whole lot of attention where they're going when they're sort of focusing on their food. So most bats, pay attention to where they're going. They don't fly into trees. I've never heard of a bat flying into a tree. So I thought that was pretty amazing. So what do they eat? They eat lanternfish as one of their main food sources, and these are in the family Myctophidae, and they're found worldwide. They're found everywhere. What's interesting is they're called lanternfish because they bioluminesce. They make their own light. Let me see if I can find it. I don't know much about these things. They make their own light. They come in a variety of sizes. During the day, they're usually deep in the water column bottom, but at night, they come up to the surface. Why they come to the surface, I don't know. We asked, there's lots of fish people here, they can tell you, but not me. But what's important is they come up to the surface, and when these fish come up to the surface, they make ripples. And this is what the bats cue in on, because echolocation could not go under the water surface. But what it can pick up is disturbances in the water surface, and that's what they cue in on. And so that's what, when they're fishing and they dip down, that's what they're dipping. They're targeting these little ripples. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later when I talk about fish catching bats. The other major food source are shrimp in the order Myceta, or opossum shrimp. They're called opossum shrimp because apparently they have little pouches here where they keep their eggs and all that. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I didn't know that. And apparently these things are raised in aquariums and fed to various kinds of things. So it's not good to be born, apparently, on opossum shrimp. So I thought that was interesting. And as it turns out, people thought, people questioned, for many years, from the early 20s of the last century, people were questioning how much marine food these bats actually ate. Someone did a really detailed study and found out they ate over 95, maybe 99% of their diet are these two things. That's pretty amazing. And these are totally marine organisms. So roosting, another really interesting part of their lifestyle. So they roost on rocks, or not on rocks, in rocky interstices, which are crevices and crags and little cracks between rocks, and maybe in caves, tall cracks. They've been found under flat stones just above the high tide line, within 3 feet of the high tide line. They've been found under turtle shells. So any port in a storm maybe kind of thing for these things. What is really interesting is a lot of these bats have been found occupying the same roosts or adjoining roosts with least petrels and black storm petrels. So, and they both nest in like talus slopes. And some researchers say they're in really close association with them. I think this is really interesting. I've never known another species of bat that cohabitates with a bird. Most bats have better sense than that. So why? And I still don't know why. Here's a storm petrel to look at. But what's really interesting about this whole association is when the petrel is out during the day feeding, the bats in the roost, taking care of business. The storm petrel comes back. The bat goes out to feed. So they don't spend that much time together. These bats don't go out though till it's after dark because apparently the gulls are out there and like to eat the bats. But what's another interesting feature of these two sharing the same spot is apparently there is a western whiptail that lives on these islands. That western whiptail apparently really likes petrel eggs. It is apparently these eggs are really yummy to western whiptails. And when the western whiptail comes in, the storm petrel makes all sorts of noise, flaps its wings, and flies away, and the lizard eats its eggs. But if there is a bat in that same roost, the bat apparently doesn't put up with the lizard. It bites it, flaps its wings, and the lizard runs away, saving the egg. So there is an advantage to the petrel to have this bat in its roost. This is a really interesting association. I don't know if anyone's really researched it much more than this. It would really be interesting to look into this more. This is an example of an island that it lives on. This is not your tropical paradise. This is Isla Encantada in Baja California. It's very rocky, cactus, scrub. Did I say rocky? This is another island. This is Isla Partita, also in Baja, also in the Gulf of California. And you can see it's very rocky and scrubby, not lots of places for roosting. So you can see they're kind of stuck in their roosting places. So, but interesting. Also, with their habit, apparently their guano adds a lot of resources to these ecosystems. Interesting. So, going to live and eat marine stuff, you need to have a good physiology. So they have very, very specialized kidneys. The microstructure of their kidneys resembles that of one of our local kangaroo rats, Deponomes merriami, and it's been made famous because this kangaroo rat does not drink water at all, ever. It eats dry seeds. And it squeezes every last drop of water out of everything it eats with its kidneys. And these bats do basically the same thing. So their kidneys are able to concentrate salts and all of that, and up to 615 milliequivalents of chloride per liter, which apparently is a lot. I'm not a physiologist, but they tell me that's a lot. But apparently that is enough to allow these guys to drink seawater as a water source. For comparison, for you and I, our kidneys do from 40 to 220. So as a note, public service announcement, don't drink seawater. So the salt concentrating ability of Myotis vivesi allows it to eat these marine crustaceans, and the fish as a regular food base. And those animals average about 75% seawater in their constitution. So if you're going to live in this environment, they have the kidneys to do it. Now, this is not really physiology. This is more sequelae, I guess, of that. And that is their wings, which is really interesting, have these things called hemopoietic nodules. And these are nodules of extravasiated blood. And it's only found on the dorsal surface of the wings. Why they're not on the ventral surface, I don't know. But it's blood from leaky blood vessels. And it's just one of these little odd things you notice, but they think it's caused by a vitamin C deficiency. So apparently their diet does not have a lot of vitamin C. So I just thought it's something interesting because lack of vitamin C causes capillary fragility. And maybe because of that fragility, because of where these capillaries are between elastic fibers and muscle fibers, may cause them to break, and then you get this extra blood and forms a nodule. So they're the only bats I know that have this, another unique thing for these bats. So a little bit on their reproduction. Gestation 55 days. They give birth in May, June. Only one pup, usually. They remain with the mother for 3 weeks, feeding on breast milk. The young do not leave the roost at all, ever, until they fly. And that's at about 50 days. After about 3 weeks, the mother will go out and forage, and she just leaves the young in the roost. They do not attach to her back or anything. Like some bats will take the young with them when they go out and forage, not this bat. At about 50 days, they've doubled in weight, doubled in size, and they can fly, and then they're out on their own. They may form maternity colonies, they're not sure. And what I found was interesting, I tried to do a little bit more research. No one seems to have done much on this since this guy's dissertation in 1968. Seems like something should have been done since then. Okay, how am I doing on time? I'm doing okay. So just some notes on fish catching bats. I'm not leaving Myotis vivesi entirely. So very few bats utilize fish as a food source. And Myotis is the only one that uses marine fish. Interestingly, most of the other bats that utilize fish, even occasionally, are all in the genus Myotis, except for a few. In the New World, the best known one is the bulldog bat, which is Noctilio leporinus. And it's found in southern Mexico, Central America, northern South America. It feeds over freshwater, brackish water, lakes, ponds. Takes, though, a significant amount of terrestrial and aquatic insects, as well as fish. What's really remarkable is how close and extremely convergent their morphologies are when it comes to fish catching. Yet they're in completely different phylogenetic lineages in terms of bats, just about as different as you can be and still be a microbat. And so this is a really classic example of convergent evolution, which was kind of the subject of my dissertation. So convergent features. Large body size. They're both large bats for their families. Elongated hind feet and toes. I've been talking a lot about feet and toes. Noctilio's hind feet average 37. Oh, there's that. we kind of missed a dash. Anyway, average 37% of the head and body length. Wings are long and narrow, high aspect ratio. Claws are pointed in the front and round in the back. I didn't mention that before, but I'm going to mention it now, and I'm going to talk about why that's important. The plagiopatagium attaches high on the tibia, well above the ankle. They use different echolocation techniques. They both look for disturbances in the water, but they do it in different ways. Noctilio leporinus, and I'm not an expert on echolocation, but from what I understand, Noctilio leporinus is really good at detecting things at a long distance. So it's flying around and it detects a ripple in the water, and it takes a long rake. It'll come and it'll rake for 10 meters across the water. Because it's found something. And it'll even just do it at random if it even thinks there's something. So it's got a different kind of echolocation. Myotis vivesi is very good for short distances, so it has no idea if there's something far away. So it does little short dips. So they fish in different ways. So this is Noctilio leporinus. As you can see, it's got long toes and claws. Just like a Myotis vivesi. You can see that the plagiopatagium high up on the leg here. So let's see what the next slide brings us. We can see comparing the feet are very similar. So, and I mentioned a couple slides back that these toes are pointed in the front, rounded in the back. And why is that important? In my dissertation, I hypothesized that was so that the toes would reduce drag, that they were hydrodynamic in the water, because you want to reduce drag. And a friend of mine who teaches at Westchester University said, "How do you know?" I said, "I don't know, but it makes sense to me. Heuristically, it makes sense. If you're going to drag something through the water, you want to reduce the amount of drag because you don't want to flop in the water and get eaten by a fish." And he said, "Okay, well, send me some feet." I said, "What?" He said, "Send me some feet." So the strangest thing I ever sent through the mail was I clipped feed off a bunch of bats, and I put them in an envelope, and I sent them to him. And he put them in a tank, and he measured whatever you measure to get hydrodynamics, a Froude number, I think it's called. And it turns out they are very hydrodynamic as compared to other bats that have regular feet. And so, but he said it doesn't make sense because when you look at animals and things that are in the water, how are they shaped? How are fish shaped? They are round in the front and sharp in the back. How are submarines shaped? They're round in the front, they're sharp in the back. Everything in the ocean is round in the front and sharp in the back. And so he was sitting around throwing these ideas around, I guess, at a faculty lunch or something, and some guy next to him said, well, yeah, it makes perfect sense. Ships are sharp in the front and round in the back. As it turns out, there's a special kind of drag at the water surface. It's called spray drag. And to reduce spray drag, you need to design something that's sharp in the front and round in the back. And that's what these things do. That is just totally amazing that this bat would know to do that. But it's not the only example. You birders, people who like birds, know black skimmers out here off our coast. Their beaks are sharp in the front and round in the back. Another example of a way to reduce spray drag. Acorn barnacles apparently are also built the same way. They're stalks. So anyway, it's too bad they're not the only one. That would be really neat. But I thought that was really neat, and that turned out to be a really quite a neat paper in the Journal of Experimental Zoology. But that was really neat when we found that out. We're really excited. Another reason why this bat is so interesting. So, convergent features, they fish in different ways. Now, remember I told you their feet are the same and everything's the same, but they fish in different ways. And these wonderful little drawings were made by one of our people at SOMAS that we work with, Cheryl Crystal. She did these little drawings for me just for this talk. I love the smiles, the little happy fishing bats. But she did it because I couldn't get a hold of the guy that actually took the pictures. So these are based on it. But what I wanted to illustrate was, here's the interfemoral membrane for Noctilio. You can see that he pulls it up between his legs. So the membrane is not involved in fishing at all. But for Myotis vivesi, it does drag in the water. So that's a big difference. Apparently, Noctilio doesn't like shrimp, so he keeps his membrane out, but he only fishes with his feet, and only his feet are in the water, and only his toes. Vivesi drags his entire foot under the water, which is really, really amazing. So, just to demonstrate a little demonstration, I had to throw in one graph as a sign. I have one graph. So this is just a simple regression or a simple linear model of hind foot length versus head and body length. And here's Noctilio. Here is Myotis vivesi. Here is an Asian bat, and it also eats fish. But you can see how large their feet are compared to all these other bats. Here's Vampirum spectrum. We talked about him earlier. Carnivorous. There's another carnivorous bat. Here's another carnivorous bat. Here's some large-bodied insectivorous flyers. Here's Myotis californicus and some of its bats that eat insects. So the whole point of this is these guys have really big feet. And they're big-bodied, so that's important for fish catching. So, submitting notes. Fishing bats are rare. Myotis vivesi is unique among the 1,400 species of bats. It has hydrodynamic feet. It eats oceanic fish and shrimp, and may be the only bat ever that eats shrimp. Processes seawater. It lives with birds. Oh, I meant to get rid of that. No accounting for taste. People who know me will understand that. And then it's just a very fascinating animal. So some acknowledgments. Thank you, Julie, for asking me to give this talk. Thank you, Ann and Somas, for giving me resources and time to do this stuff. And thanks to the photographers for the permission for using their photographs. And I've listed them all here. Thanks for Cheryl for doing the sketches of the bats. And thank you to all of you for listening. And I will entertain any questions.
Thanks, Brad. What an awesome talk. So now we're going to have some questions from the audience, but before we start that, a full disclosure, I'm going to have Zach turn on the mics. So if you guys would all look up, see these 4 discs above you? See those 4? Now they're green. So what that means is those are live mics and everybody at home can hear you. Okay, so those of you that came to the lectures before, that was always a big problem, that the people at home couldn't hear the questions. And so now they will hear your questions, but they will hear you chit-chatting. If you're chit-chatting over in the corner and the question's over here, these are very strong mics. So just keep that in mind, that anything you say to who's sitting next to you, everybody at home will hear you. Okay, all right, so full disclosure. All right, we can proceed with the questions.
Brad, if the bat grabs onto a fish which is too heavy and ends up in the water, is it able to lift itself out of the water?
That is a very good question. Some bats can swim. Actually, all bats can swim. Actually, all mammals can swim. I've not heard much about this bat, whether it can pull itself out of the water. It's usually out in the middle of nowhere in terms of where it's at. So I would say if it gets caught in the water, it's probably, I'm just speculating, probably cannot go into flight from water, I would think. So, yes, sorry.
Are they found in Catalina?
These bats? No. There are bats in Catalina, but not this guy. He's strictly Baja bound.
So I can say that again.
No, I can't say that again. That gentleman there.
I would think that the fossil records of these bats would be very interesting. Do you have any information about that?
I do not, but I recall trying to catch up on some of the literature that there is some fossil record work that is available. I did not download it, but there is some there. Yes.
These bats, are they only hunt at night?
Yes. Yes.
Since you're out watching the bats at night, that's what it sounds like. How do you see them at night when it's dark?
That's why there's so few photographs of them. So I will tell you, the photographs from Glenn Thompson, thank you, Glenn, for letting me use them. He saw them. His boat was tied up. I forget exactly where it was in Baja. He saw them flying, so he actually went and set a camera up. He had the lights on on this boat, and it was shining out beyond it. And he went and set a camera up on the side of the boat and just put it on automatic and just kept taking pictures every time they went through. The pictures of these things are very rare. I'll tell you an anecdote, which I probably shouldn't do, are very rare. But one of the drawings was from a photograph from a fellow who was a professor at University of New Mexico. Now I was going to do a postdoc under him on vampire bats, of all things. So I went to visit with him, and he gave me this, showed me this picture of Pisonyx, and it was a beautiful picture of it dipping in the water. And he told me, I got this one picture, but before I got it, I tried and tried and tried. I had this bat in this cage. I had this beautiful water trough, and I had my camera ready, and it wouldn't do anything. He said, and I thought, well, all right, it's a marine bat. So I filled it with salt water, make it look like the ocean. I made waves, so it looked like water. I went down to the ocean and I recorded seagulls, and I recorded waves crashing, and I played all that. And I didn't get anything. And so finally I turned the bat loose, drove it down to Baja and got rid of it. And I went through thousands of feet of film and found one frame. That was one picture. So these are notoriously hard to photograph. So anyway, that's probably a bad digression, but yeah.
So you said that they can determine the ripples, they echolocate, but doesn't the Sea of Cortez have waves and they can distinguish between then the waves and the ripples for fish?
Well, I would imagine, and I'm just speculating, if it's too rough, they can't hunt. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Do you make a comparison between bat flying and bird flying? Are they the same or different?
The basic mechanics are the same in terms of this is, you're making me draw on 37-year-old memories. Is that they go up and over and down and back. It's the same basic motion. In terms of lift, in terms of it's the same basic motion, same basic mechanics, and the same way of making lift, if that makes any sense. So
They have the flexibility of bird feathers. They don't, do they?
no.
They have a different way of manipulating themselves.
Yeah, but it's the same basic motion and the mechanics of the lift are basically the same. Yes.
Yes, so initially showed us a map of all of the whole world. Do these bats adapt to like different environments or different ecosystems?
Mhm. Yeah, there's some bats that are more specialized than others. Some are very broad. But some are very specialized, like this one. It's only found there, but some are very broad. So it just depends on the species. Yeah.
Well, I have two questions. The first one is, these bats roost solitary besides like hanging out with the petrels?
Yeah.
Besides the mothers.
Mhm. Yeah, there may be more than one, depends on the size of the crevice. So, but they're not typically, they're not big, there's not thousands of these things in the
Okay, so they're fine hanging out with each other if there's room.
No, it just depends. But they're not all that friendly.
And then the other question was, did you have access, because I think you were talking about like, yeah, dissecting these bats and just bats in general. Did you have access to these bats in particular? And if so, how often? And how did that come about? Like, did you have access to like specimens of this bat?
Yes. I had access to specimens at the LA County Museum, but I also got specimens from the Field Museum, American Museum of Natural History, the U.S. National Museum, the Museum of Vertebrates, the museum at the University of Michigan. I got specimens from all over. You had a question. You've had your hand up for a while.
So you said that these bats are flying and flying and flying over this open water. But what if they get really tired?
Then they'll go back to the roost.
But what if they're too far out and then they just fall in the water?
They will know when they're getting tired and they will turn around. But that is a good question. Yes, ma'am.
Do they have like enemies are there animals that eat
Yes.
bats?
Yes, they leave the roost after dark when it's pitch black because apparently the gulls like to eat them. So if there's any gull activity, they do not leave the roost. Also, feral cats and rats are very good predators, which is why when I mentioned that earlier, this is why they're such easy prey because of where they roost. If they're on rock interstices and in rock cracks and it's really close to the high tide line where it's easy for cats and rats to get into, they easily prey on the bats. So the ones that do better, ones that are up in higher cracks where the cats and rats can't get to them. So you had your hand up for a while.
Just curious, I know some bats carry rabies. Do all bats have rabies?
I think all mammals have the potential to carry rabies. It's one of those things where we all have the potential, but the incidence of rabies in bats is really no higher than in any other mammal, and probably lower than in things like most carnivores. Yes.
I'm gonna kind of shift a little bit to a different species, Myotis californicus. We've got one living in a bird box that my husband built, and no more birds in it. And I read up, and it said that this would live for about 3 to 4 years. And this guy's been in our house for 5 years. A big benefit, mosquitoes are way down. But how long can these things live?
Good question.
I caught something somewhere that,
I'm getting cues from the audience. There was a guy, Robert Orr, who was a curator at Cal Academy, I think had, what was it? Bat in captivity for 30 years. I'm not sure on Myotis californicus, but I think some bats can live up to 40 years.
that would be good.
Yeah. So you're lucky to have one in a bird box. But a lot of people put out even bat houses and they just, nothing ever shows up but spiders.
I was surprised. Reason why I noticed it is some finch were trying to get into the bird nest. I go, oh, good, we're gonna have some baby birds, but they wouldn't go in. So I go, what's going on? And the whole thing was full of cobwebs.
Mhm.
Seems like this bat gets a lot of cobwebs around it. So I grabbed a cloth to clean out the cobwebs so the birds could get in. And my knuckles brushed against something that was soft, furry, and warm. So, holy moly.
Oh,
Do these bats get that white nose disease?
no, this bat doesn't, too warm in Baja. Ralph, you had your hand up a while ago. Yes, sir.
I know with a variety of different seabirds, they will like glide on the winds and stuff like that instead of having to use all that energy for flapping and stuff. Do these bats do that too, or?
They're pretty much flapping flight. I've not heard of them really gliding. So. Yes, ma'am.
Names of birds that they sometimes cohabitate with?
Petrels, storm petrels and least petrels.
Have you considered writing a children's book, Romeo and Juliet style?
No.
This last data that you show about like, the linear graph, was that, there were different bats. Was all that data taken at different points, or was it all at once? And you try to see which bat would come down like further, or?
Say that again, I didn't quite get
Okay, so that last graph that you showed,
Mhm.
with all
The
different
graph
bats,
with the line, okay.
yeah. Okay, so was that all taken at different points and at different times, or like different months, or?
No, it was all just static. So it was really just looking at different feeding bats. So there were bats that do just feed on insects in the air, and there were carnivorous bats. There were some heavy-bodied insectivores. They were at the bottom, and then the fishing bats. And really what I used that for was just look at really I wanted to see how big were the feet of fishing bats relative to other kinds of feeding strategies that bats use. And
Gotcha.
they just turned out to have really big feet.
Thank you.
Yes.
So are these bats, on kind of like a bounce off of the other question, in regards to like getting communal like diseases, they're not really doing that? No?
No. In terms of white nose, no, they don't. What other diseases they might get, I don't know. But right now, all I know is they do at least suffer from a vitamin C deficiency. They have scurvy.
Let's take a couple questions from home.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. Ken wants to know if the bats are scanning ripples in the water looking for fish, how do they differentiate wind ripples from fish ripples?
I don't think they can. Ripple's a ripple.
So they would just maybe miss.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
would just, they would come up empty and be sad.
They wouldn't get it. Yep.
Wouldn't
Okay.
get- They
And
wouldn't get a
then
meal.
Megan wants to know, does the male and or female have different jobs, or do they each do their own thing because the baby only stays itself? So what brings the food to the baby?
Once mating is done, the male and female have nothing to do with one another. So only the female takes care of the young. Male goes off to do whatever males do.
Just goes and
Yeah.
feeds on his
Yeah,
own.
and that's where it comes in, where they may have segregation after mating. They really don't know, but it appears that just the females take care of the young and feed the young with female's milk, and that's about it.
And then there's one more statement, but I have a question. The bulldog bat, where was that one found?
Southern Mexico, Central America, and Northern South America, and the Caribbean. I forgot that one.
So it is not, but not Baja. So the two species are not found in the same
Never the
area.
twain shall meet,
Yeah.
as the saying goes.
Yeah. And that was the focus of your research, was the convergent evolution, how they both feed on fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's cool. All right, so Ginny, it's more of a statement than a question. The IUCN 2016 map doesn't show Vesii living on the islands around Loreto, but they still do. There's a large colony on the Isla de Carmen. The photo of the bat foot I took on the island Santa Cruz, south of Loreto, where I found it recently dead on a beach, though it could have roosted on another island. Thanks for a great presentation.
Oh, thank you for the photo, Ginny. And I would not put a whole lot of credence in the maps from the IUCN. They're a great organization, but I wouldn't put a lot of credence in that. There is a new book coming out by Sergio Tucula Alvarez, very good mammalogist from Mexico. He's redone the mammals of North America, so I'm really looking forward to that, and I'm going to look and see what his distribution is for this species, and see if he has any better maps. And I've already ordered my copy. It was supposed to come any minute now, but it's been, of course, delayed a month. But hopefully he'll have some better information for that. So
Okay.
fingers
Okay.
crossed.
How about two more questions?
Yes.
What type into bats?
This is not a question anyone should really ask. So I did cotton rats for my master's thesis, and then I went to USC, studied under the curator of mammals at the LA County Museum. And what I really wanted to do is I wanted to redo Osgood's Mammals of Chile. So I wanted to go down to Chile and I wanted to look at all the mammals in Chile, and I wanted to do that. But I didn't have any money. And of course, going to Chile takes lots of money. And he said, well, okay, well, I've always been interested in this. He said, I wanted to look at this bat. I said, okay, which is it? He said, he introduced me to this. And he said, I've seen it down there and it does fish and it seems really interesting. I said, okay, well, that sounds good. I can do that right here. So he didn't have any grant money, so it was something I could do at the museum. We had specimens, and it turned out to be a really interesting study. I got to take lots of bats apart. I got to smell lots of alcohol, because that's what they're preserved in. And yeah, so that's how I got into bats. And the more you get into them, and I did more than just those two. I probably included, I think, 35 or 36 species of bats in my study. So I took lots of bats apart. Never put any together, but I did take them apart. Question?
What are the signs that they have scurvy?
Those are the hemopoietic nodules in their wings. So apparently vitamin C deficiency makes the venous capillaries very fragile. So that, like sailors get bleeding gums. You had your hand up again, sir?
Yes, just worth noting that the young bat, when it releases from the ceiling, it has 2 to 3 seconds to learn how to fly. And in addition to that, the bats, I happen to be an aerodynamicist, bats are statically unstable. They're unstable, which makes it difficult to fly in the first place. So they have 3 seconds to learn how to fly. It's a fascinating aspect of nature.
Interesting. Oh, well, they better learn quick then. Question?
I heard you mention saltwater and brackish water. Are there any freshwater fishing bats?
Yes. So in Europe, you have Myotis capucini, Myotis dalbentini, Myotis tassignemi, Myotis pilosus in China. They mostly fish over freshwater, and they're mostly taking aquatic insects, but occasionally they'll dip for fish. And they're all in the genus Myotis. There's another American species in the same genus, Noctilio. It's Noctilio albaventris, and it takes mostly aquatic insects, but it's also mostly over freshwater. And then there's a bat, a philostomid bat, Macrophyllum macrophyllum, in South America, which probably takes fish. I thought it did when I did it in my dissertation, and things proven it also occasionally takes fish and also over freshwater.
Okay, we're gonna hold the questions there. Oh, now we go. We're gonna hold the questions there, and please help join me in thanking Dr. Brad Blood for a wonderful talk.